Welcome to the Deskbound Therapy Podcast, hosted by David London. David is a posture and mobility expert, yoga teacher, and certified online trainer. This podcast is about empowering desk-bound professionals, how to live their healthiest life, and move pain-free. Now, let's dive into this episode.
What up, guys? I'm your host, David London. Welcome back to the Deskbound Therapy Podcast, Season 2. Today is going to be a solo episode. I'm going to be talking about habits to move more, habits to get your mobility done more often, habits to make mobility a habit, a part of your everyday routine and part of your everyday life. Because one of the biggest things I hear, whether it's new clients or potential clients or, friends asking me questions about mobility, it's like, David, I keep forgetting to do my mobility work. The day goes by and I just forget that I didn't do anything. Sometimes I just sit at my desk and I haven't done anything at all. And, I can definitely resonate with that. I find we live in such a fast-paced life where doing mobility can be hard for you. But just like developing any other habit, there's a lot of strategies I've used, and I'm going to go over a few in my ebook, The Deskbound Therapy Guide, kind of that I found to be effective. But the biggest thing for me is I know the morning is the most important time. It sets the tone for my day. And I say to all my clients, if you do even 5-10 minutes of mobility work in the morning, then you already have gotten so much progress done right away. It's going to set the tone for the day. Like the days where I stretch in the morning are really the days where I find more ways and I go out of my way to make sure I'm working mobility because I start feeling good. And you want to really set that foundation, get the joints lubricated in the morning. Because I find if I wake up and don't do any, cat cows or anything for my back for that matter, I notice that I can't sit for as long without getting a little bit of pain and discomfort. So if you're just hearing this today, you've never done mobility before, or you're just having trouble making a routine, pick one exercise, do it in the morning. Just do one thing, keep it simple. Do that for a week, 2 weeks. Once you're consistent with that, pick another exercise. Now you're at 3-4 minutes in the morning, so on and so forth. Start becoming consistent with 1 or 2 things here and there, as opposed to, doing a million things at once. So if you're listening to this, for example, we started with a cat cow or a hip flexor stretch, just keep it simple. And if you're consistent with that, throughout the day, you can do that one exercise. And it doesn't need to be the most fancy exercise. It can just be one thing to get you into the groove of doing more mobility. Because I found myself when I picked that one thing, I ended up doing a lot more movement because one exercise leads to another, which can lead to a nice mobility flow and some intuitive, movement in the morning, which can be really good and can be really effective to improve your mobility. Just taking that time to listen to your body and start noticing things move better. Now, aside from, habits to make mobility more effective, I will always do a stretch at my desk before I start working. So right now I'm sitting in the chair. If you're watching the video on YouTube, I'm just doing a little stretch for my neck, bending side to side. And there's tons of different ones. You can put your hands overhead. You can extend your spine. You can round your back, side bend and twist. I'm sitting in my core chair, which makes it easy for me to move at my desk. But that can be it in itself, as every, after you finish every task at work, or every time you're starting something new, or every time you're getting up or sitting down, even to just practice touching your toes, right? We want to find different ways we can first ingrain mobility into your lifestyle before we get you, on a specific routine at the end of the day, or a half an hour routine specific to your hips or one problem area. But really, I rather you, if you're going to sit 8 hours a day, I'd rather you move, 5 minutes each hour than if you're doing one long yoga session at the end of the day, because you're going to really be rounding forward and forward and forward. And it's really going to, affect your posture. So if we can just spend that time, throughout the day, it's going to add up more than just an hour would. But yeah, stretches at the desk are so severely underrated. I don't think you guys need to be afraid of your coworkers judging you anymore, partially because, we are working from home. But if you are working in an office, it feels really good to move. So I've one tip from my ebook, strategy number 5, and an effective strategy to take mobility breaks is, find a DBT buddy, find a buddy to do your desk-bound therapy with. You don't need to practice DBT alone. Find a friend or a coworker, a study buddy, and take turns reminding each other to get up, moving at least once an hour. And, eventually this will become a fun, energizing activity that you look forward to. It can be like even during your coffee break, you can go to your coworker or somebody in your house and be like, hey, you want to do some desk bound therapy? Do you want to, do a stretch with me? We've been sitting for quite a bit. There's a few stretches David showed me. Let's go check on his page. Let's find something to do. And I find that to be a great way that you can, instead of relying all on yourself, you can rely on a partner to keep each other accountable. Because I'm sure you're not the only one, struggling with your posture, struggling with discomfort. A lot of, everyone has these issues, and it's important to, to reach out and to get the support, because you really aren't alone. You're not alone in this for sure. Another strategy I like that I use a lot, and again, these are strategies to help me take breaks from sitting at my desk and using these as cues and prompts to move more, because it's all about finding what works for you. And strategy number one in the Deskbound Therapy Guide is the music strategy. So kind of like the Pomodoro method, I like to choose a playlist or an album with a fixed duration instead of shuffling a radio while I'm working or listening to, a playlist of songs or podcasts. Ideally, 30 to 45 minutes maximum, as you really don't want to sit for an entire hour before moving, because that gets to the point where you just get so, stuck in that position. So pick something 25 minutes. At the end of that, make sure what I'll do is I'll make like YouTube playlists where I know it's going to end, versus Spotify, it's going to keep going and finding something, or playing like an album. That way I know like some background beats, putting on 25 minutes. Like one I use sometimes is Brain FM. You can schedule it for 25 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. So I'll put the 25-minute one. Once that is up, it is my cue to take a break, to get up and move, work on my mobility. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you need, whatever you have time for. But, you really got to use these cues to get you into the routine. Because say you do, one of those 5-minute breaks, you can do some lower body hip mobility. You can, stand up at your desk, move your hips and circle and arms through full range of motion. You can do some squats, right? And this can all be done right before you get back to sitting at your desk, but it doesn't need to be so complicated. As I was saying before, I want you to get consistent before we complicate things. So that can be really good. And then for my students in my 12-week posture and mobility online group coaching program, I give them specific things they do at the desk, while they're taking breaks, that are going to be specific to their body's needs. Because once you can get to that point, we can build that foundation and we can do, exactly what you need. But it's all about really building the habit to do mobility more often. And eventually, as this is to the point where I like to get my clients to, but eventually as you grow your desk-bound therapy practice and become more in tune with your body, you'll start to automatically know when you need to get up from your desk, when you need to move around, when you need to do specific mobility, because you want to avoid getting to that spot where you bend over and you're like, oh, shit, David, my back is really sore. You want to be proactive and avoid those things. So, using those mental reminders, say, for example, one day you wake up and your back's really sore, then those one or two things in the morning are going to be, hips, hamstrings, lower back, stuff like that, that can help the potentially help you kind of mitigate whatever issues you could be dealing with. There's so many, different strategies. It really comes down to, to your why at the end of the day. Like, why? Really ask yourself, not like your surface level why. Yeah, I know I need to do mobility.
Hi, my name is Jay Johnston, and I wanted to make a testimonial video for my strength and conditioning coach, David, at Deskbound Therapy. I've been working with David since June 2018, and the things that brought me to David were I came across him first on social media, on Instagram. And I'm an athlete myself, primarily in the sport of baseball, but I also work a full-time job being a desk job as well. So there's two sides of me, and the reason why, I reached out to David. But a lot of the posts that David was posting on Instagram related to me, and I liked how it was really, simple and to the point on, mobility and how I can improve the areas I need to improve. When I first came to David, I specifically stated that my shoulders and my hips were the most immobile parts of my body. And when we started doing the program, he did some assessments on me and noticed how they were mobile, explained the reasons why. And from there, we had more of a structured protocol that we followed in order to improve. Now being a little bit over a year later, I've definitely seen big improvements, not only in athletic performance, but just overall my health, which I feel that's important. Translating all the training that we've done, whether it be mobility, whether it be strength and conditioning, and just overall general wellness, I really feel that anybody who is looking to just better themselves and bettering their well-being should definitely link up with David.
But really ask yourself, pause, reflect a second here. Why do I need to do mobility? Why is it important to me? Because I found when I tied goals to it, yes, I want to be pain-free, I want to maintain good posture, and I want to train pain-free. Those are the three for me personally and a lot of the people I work with. But I found I got the best results in my mobility and flexibility practice when I had a tangible goal with that. For example, when I was, first started out with this 8 or 9 years ago or so with yoga and mobility in the world of fitness and all that, I wanted to do the splits and I was so freaking motivated. I would work on it every single day or every other day, just trying to slowly work the progressions, slowly work deeper into that. The same thing for back bends. I wanted to do a hollow back handstand. So every day I was doing back bends, I was doing shoulder openers, I was doing chest openers. And I found this extremely motivating. And it got to the point where, I was doing wall back bends and different shoulder stands, but I found like the mobility was transferring to a lot of the movements I was doing. And I was so motivated. It's kind of like chasing a PR in the gym. So if you can kind of, say, for example, you want to get better at a squat, that one's extremely motivating for a lot of desk bound lifters. And you can really just focus and hone in on that. If you want to get a better bench, you can really focus on the back bends and the shoulder mobility. But I like looking at it in terms of, different movements. You can get better at the squat, the middle splits. You can get better, ankle mobility. If you're a runner, better hamstring and hip mobility. But I find that, just like I said, like that can really motivate you and uncover a really powerful why. For example, you say you want to get better at handstands, like that's really good. So try to tie it towards maybe, a goal, whether it be to get rid of lower back pain while you're working all day or waking up without pain. If that's what motivates you, or if it's, you want to do the splits, whatever it is, really just take a second before you do your mobility practice and let that be a constant reminder to yourself to, to take the time to work on your mobility. Because I find that can be extremely powerful, because you really don't want to go through the motions with mobility work, because you'll end up rushing things, you'll end up using momentum, and you end up not recruiting the right muscles. And we really want to, make sure that the effort we're putting in is actually leading towards an outcome. Now, another cool habit I want to talk to is more so in terms of productivity. Like I always say, like ideally we want to minimize periods of sitting and inactivity and boost periods of productivity. So we're not aimlessly sitting without the benefits of accomplishing a task. So I want you, if you're listening to this, to always have a specific task in mind to complete while you're working away at your desk. And then during your allocated, intervals, using the music, like I said before. Because if you're unproductive and sitting, this is your time to take a mobility break. Because what's the point of being unproductive and sitting and putting all that stress in your body? You're just going to stress yourself out because your mind and body need a break. So use that as another cue to develop a habit. If you notice you're just sitting there and you're distracted, or you're standing at your desk and you're just not doing anything, go down to the mat, put your foot on your chair, stretch your hamstring. Just find ways you can fill it in throughout the day. It's almost kind of like habit stacking. Like in the morning, my current routine is I wake up, I shower, I meditate, and then I listen to a podcast and I do mobility. So, sometimes it's a 7-minute podcast, sometimes it's a 10-minute, sometimes it's a 40-minute podcast, but I try to pair things together. So again, I'm not mindlessly moving, but I have it in the background to kind of stimulate my brain and help me wake up. And I'm also going through, the movements with my mobility practice, which is super, super, important to kind of save time. Because I know a lot of people who are listening to this, they are desk bound, they are busy, they want to go to the gym after work at the end of the day. So habit stacking throughout the day can be really good too. Sometimes I used to even stretch while I was working at my desk. Like say I was standing at my desk, I'll just, I'll be reading like an article and doing a little side bend through the arms or some neck circles while I'm sitting. Like it doesn't always need to be, while you're not doing anything else, but it can be, different ways you can integrate things. Like you can grab a resistance band while you're standing at your desk. even in a Zoom meeting, and just do a little bit of a stretch, and just do, because you want to take care of your body. You want to put the integrity back into your body. So don't be afraid to, experiment and find out what habits work for you guys. Because it's really about, listening to what I'm saying here, trying things out, and kind of seeing what works for you. Now, I got two last tips today. A lot of times when we go to the gym, we're rushed, right? People want to get in and they want to get out, but you really, hopefully, if your schedule permits, like, do 10-15 minutes of mobility before your workout can be really good. You want to prioritize, say, lower body. You want to, get those joints open up, get them moving. So I'm not saying, flexibility and static stretching, but, actually active range of motion work, getting the body moving, get the temperature of body heated up, working through the movement. Say you're going to barbell squat, like working on your hip mobility, ankle mobility, all those kinds of things can be really powerful. And I found when I was working on those advanced flexibility movements that I was talking about earlier, like the splits and the back bends, that I got the best results after my workouts, because, my body was warm, my body was primed. And I was, the key to, getting more mobile is, exploring new range of motion and developing strength and mobility in those ranges of motion. So I found after workout, I could really sink deep into my splits right away. I didn't need to warm up as much because my body was already warm. And that's when you start to, a lot of the times people, if you're not, if you're new to mobility, or you don't know your limits, you're really just maintaining your mobility. But if you want to push the needle forward and get to, to do the splits, to improve your posture, to stretch your hamstrings, it's going to take some work. So you really need to slowly, millimeter by millimeter, inch by inch, creep deeper into these movements, and then build strength on top of them to maintain it long term. Otherwise, you're just going to forever be maintaining. So listening to your body, making sure you're warm, and slowly over years, months, working deeper into these movements. The last tip I'm going to give you guys today is one of my favorites for those busy people out there. And this is when you're at the gym, in between sets, I love to do mobility. So say, for example, I'm benching. I like to do shoulder mobility, active range work between my sets, whether that be activating my trap muscles, doing some, banded shoulder dislocates, or some banded shoulder extension. A lot of times too, if I'm trying to save my upper body strength, I will do, for example, it's lower body day, I'll do some, shoulder mobility or hip mobility. And if it's upper body day and my shoulders are feeling good, my back's feeling good, I'll do some hip mobility. Because, if your goal is to improve your posture and improve your mobility so you can train pain-free, then you don't want to sit in between sets, just round your shoulders forward on Instagram. You don't want to do that. I see it time and time again, but that isn't going to reinforce functional movement patterns and good quality movement. So really just take that time, do some mobility in between sets, and you're gonna see some great results. Like my bench was the strongest. I was benching around 185 for a few sets of 6 when I was doing mobility between sets, working on my shoulder extension, because I'm working the opposite position. I'm making sure my shoulders don't round forward. So a lot of awesome tips I've shared today, whether they be to help you do mobility, help you do more mobility, help you make mobility a habit into your everyday routine. So I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know kind of which ones of these habits and tips have been the most effective for you. Anytime, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at DeskboundTherapy. I love to hear from my listeners. If you have any questions you want to ask me, or episodes you want or guests you want on the show, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Grateful for all of you listening today. Stay tuned for the next episode. Definitely not want to miss out on this one. Thanks for listening.